As we look at new poll numbers that continue to come out, what do you see? Donald Trump is actually ahead, like ahead by about 2 point something points overall, nationally speaking, in the average of Real Clear Politics polls right now. That's a big deal, only because typically the way Donald Trump tends to poll, he actually like underpolls, right? Like, I mean, think about how much he's done in terms of those polls, almost to spite the polls, right? Because every time they have a poll, it turns out when it actually comes to election time, he does a little bit better. Now, a lot of people are like, well, you know, look at what happened at midterms, but he wasn't on the ballot. He will be on the ballot in 2024. So the Biden administration is right to be nervous, and nervous they are. They're nervous. Why? Because they got a bad candidate, number one, and two, I mean, in all seriousness, is your life better now? Is it better than, let's say, pre-COVID, like in 2019? I think most people collectively would tell you no. I mean, things were actually better before. And when you look at a lot of the economic data, that's also what it points to. You saw a growth in the middle class, unlike anything we had seen in some 50 years, in terms of what people were making, in terms of wages. We can talk about wages and wage growth that came out today, but when you compare and contrast it with the inflation overall, you saw some steady, healthy growth in wages among the middle class. And that actually pointed to some of the success of the Trump policies. You had lower energy prices, and now we're looking at energy prices that are continuing to go just through the roof. Apparently, there's going to be an investigation. The House Republicans want to actually investigate the Department of Energy now and try and look at just exactly whether or not there's any sort of kickback between some of the green energy deals that are going on and the Department of Energy and some of the prominent politicians that might be involved in some of that. I think it's an interesting thing to look at, especially in light of what we've learned about Hunter, etc. Anyway, we get a lousy economy, and we get a problem at the border, and as a result, Biden realizes the only way he's going to win this thing is maybe if he can just, again, get people to think, okay, he's the nice guy, he's the moderate, and you don't want Trump. So he's doubling down on this rhetoric that's very anti-MAGA, that's very inspired by, okay, January 6th was awful and it was all Trump's fault. And because of that, it would be the end of democracy. End of democracy if you were to ever vote for this guy. So that's the messaging. I'm just preparing you. You're going to hear it. You're going to hear it coming out of Valley Forge tomorrow. And he's trying to like harken back to Revolutionary War times. I mean, don't forget, it's where the Continental Army was. I mean, site of, great speech by Washington. And so you can anticipate that this is what he's trying to channel. And he's going to tell you one thing and one thing only. You cannot elect Donald Trump, because if you do, it's the end of the country. It is the end of America. It is the end of democracy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Except that people are sitting there saying, well, it didn't end before. And by the way, as much as you want to say about J6, as much as you want to, like, they still didn't actually prosecute him for insurrection. Now, did they? I mean, we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court, et cetera, with all of that. But I think that the average American is still going back to, wait a second, how was my life then versus how is my life now? And they don't feel like the world's in a really good place with Joe Biden.